You know, I'm so glad to welcome Patrice ONWUKA back and Andrew Donaldson on this Preakness Saturday in our nation's capital. And welcome to the Armstrong Williams Show, because when I leave here, I'm off to the races, baby, off to the races. The fog of war, all that fragile ceasefire now hanging over the region cannot be separated from the China summit. Behind the public diplomacy and staged optics is a far more dangerous reality, America. Global powers, as Patricia and Andrew will tell you, are quietly positioning themselves for leverage, influence, and economic survival should the ceasefire collapse. You know, China understands something that many Americans still underestimate. You know what that is? Wars today are not only fought with missiles and troops, but through energy routes, supply chains, rare earth minerals, shipping lanes, cyber pressure, and financial dependency. Something to think about, right? And remember this, if I can remind you, the Strait of Hormuz remains still one of the most dangerous pressure points on planet Earth, and one, not two, not three, but one miscalculation, one proxy attack, one political overreaction could send oil markets, inflation, and global stability into chaos overnight. That is why this summit that just ended mattered so much. And our guests are going to give us their take on that summit. Now, you know, Trump seeks strength and leverage. China seeks patience and strategic advantage. And what does Iran seek? Survival. What does Europe seek? Stability. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens like you that watch us across the United States and in the world simply hope the ceasefire holds long enough for diplomacy to outrun escalation. Patricia, will diplomacy outrun escalation?
Yes, good to see you, Armstrong. I think I'm an optimist, and I'm optimistic that coming out of the trade deals and the summit between President Trump and President Xi will be a greater understanding between the two nations, who are typically rivals, but certainly there's opportunities for greater trade. Now, that said, you know, the readout on the first meeting that President Xi and President Trump had, you know, you see both digging into their positions of strength. President Trump says, hey, we want to see China open up its markets to American businesses, particularly in agriculture. And there have been China has agreed to do that, although they agreed to do that back in the Trump 1.0 administration and did not keep their promise. You know, then China is saying, you know, okay, we can deal with businesses, we can deal with American businesses, but Taiwan is a huge issue, to one of the points you raised in your monologue, Armstrong. When it comes to Taiwan, China wants to take control of Taiwan and wants the American government not just to be neutral, but to be entirely hands off. And, you know, it's very interesting to see what could happen as a result when it comes to Taiwan, and obviously some of the other trading partners that the United States and China has. And then what about the other big countries? Russia. Apparently, the Russian president plans to also have a summit with President Xi too. So I think China might feel a little bit like the girl at the dance. She has two suitors who are very interested in her. The question is, who will she go with? Who will she align with? And I think the United States recognizes that we are rivals, but there's still opportunity for a dance that could be long lasting. You know,
Andrew, Patricia mentioned Russia and Putin has signaled there may be an end soon to the war in Ukraine. That remains to be seen. However, China realizes something, if this is true, that intelligence sources are saying that our military arsenal, the assets that we once had have been depleted, and therefore it has given China an advantage. You say what?
Not only that, they can also look at maps. They understand that some of those amphib groups that we sent to bolster the Gulf of Hormuz and the things we're doing there, a lot of those came from the Pacific Theater, which is something they keep very close tabs on. And you just talked about their influence here in Iran is a very real thing because them, along with the Russians, have used Iran for decades to be a thorn in our side and to keep us and the rest of the West busy and on our toes and as a disruptor to their other purposes. So there's multiple layers to this, and they pay very close attention to the sort of things like, now we want to be careful with arms stockpiles because we don't know the whole thing, and we do have an amazing manufacturing ability to replenish those if we so choose to do it. But it is a real issue, and that is one of the things they watch. And to get to the wider point of what you just said, they watch that because it's not that they want open conflict. One of the things, the reason I'm kind of an optimist with things like the diplomatic stuff is because people like Xi Jinping, they know open warfare is bad for business. They see what Russia is costing in Ukraine. They've watched what happened when the Soviet Union fell. They want to do business. The GCC countries didn't turn from terrorism for ideological reasons. They realized it was bad for business. And China has a demographic and economic cliff coming, and they want to do business in this time to raise hay for them so that they can be prepared for that coming. So I think they're looking at it as a business way, and I think they use the military as leverage of like, we're putting out our military, we're building it up, but it's also so we can do our economic kind of stronghold for the future.
Let me see if I can throw the always prepared Miss ONWUKA a curveball. She's always prepared. I'm always impressed. But anyhow, which global conflict today, Ms. ONWUKA, poses the greatest long-term threat to American stability and interest, yet receives the least media attention?
Oh, I mean, maybe China, maybe the Ukraine has certainly moved off of the television screens. I mean, I honestly think it's more of the move of China across a lot of third world countries, particularly when you look at Africa and the Caribbean, where you've seen China try to expand its footprint in some of these smaller countries that are poor and looking for investment, but find themselves in another semi-colonialist, relationship. So that's, I think, where a lot of attention is not, but really should be.
If you want to come back to it after you think deeper, because I know how your mind works, we certainly can revisit this before we say goodbye. Andrew, let me do the same to you. Are Americans being conditioned to focus only on wars involving major powers while ignoring humanitarian catastrophes unfolding elsewhere?
Yeah, and especially since all this stuff's interrelated, let's take Africa you just mentioned. Russia's been ripping the gold out of Africa to fund the Ukraine war for quite some time now. We have documentation of that. The Strait of Hormuz closure, one of the things we don't talk enough about is the fertilizer crisis. We're already going to have more famine in Africa right now, even if they solve it today, going forward in Africa. We know China goes to places like Africa and Asia and other places and offers infrastructure buildup in order to get leverage over those countries going forward. We see that over and over and again. So even these regional conflicts, as we sometimes call them, they actually fit into the global power structures. And especially American and Western media, we do a really bad job of stringing those threads together. We want to talk about just the consumer side or the American side. And these things, if you pull enough threads, they all kind of go back to the same political themes we're talking about.
I'm going to come back to you, Ms. ONWUKA, because he did mention Africa. And how dangerous is the growing instability across Africa and the Sahel region, of course? Let's just talk about that region. And why is it largely absent from the public discourse?
Africa, and I'm glad I had a couple more minutes to think about it. My mind then went to Nigeria and the persecution of Christians in Nigeria, and how these groups, and to my colleagues' points about how these groups all these conflicts are related. When you consider that a lot of these terrorist-driven campaigns that are waged against Christians, in different African regions and African countries, including Nigeria, they all tend to be funded by a lot of the same evil actors. Whether it's U.S. ships being, annoyed by the Houthis, or whether it's the the Islamists that are supported by Iran. And these are Iran's subsidiaries. These are Iran's hired contractors doing a lot of work, and a lot of negative work, or a lot of dangerous work and terrorist work around the world. And so they're all very much related. They just don't get a lot of coverage unless someone like President Trump says something. For example, for a few weeks, we saw a lot about Nigeria and the religious persecution, which happened to be around Easter, where there was a terrible massacre for days. But then that left the headlines, and people in U.S. media went back to, well, we hate Trump because he's uncovering fraud, or we hate Trump because he said something racist. And so it's unfortunate that I think our attention spans for foreign policy are very short, especially or unless it has a direct impact on our pockets and our wallets. And until we can overcome that and actually care about the humanitarian crises that very often have a lot to do with these larger foreign powers and the money within terrorist networks and terrorist supporting countries, then, we're just not going to see Americans really care about it.
She said a mouthful there, as my parents would say, Andrew, and I want to take some of her points. I wrote them down. How much influence do you think are China, Russia, Iran, and we don't talk about Turkey enough, quietly gaining in regions where American engagement has receded?
Yeah, Turkey's one of those fun ones because Erdogan really likes to play both sides against the middle, especially trying to insert himself in the Middle East conflict. But he's also a NATO member, which really becomes a pain in the butt anytime we try to do anything NATO-wise. So that's a dog ear that one for the future. It's going to keep coming up, right? But this is one of those wider things we just discussed, and she makes an excellent point here, is you have to sometimes separate, especially as Americans, what your presidents are doing domestic political wise and foreign policy wise. If you really didn't like George W. Bush, well, he did PEPFAR, which is one of the most miraculous things the world's ever seen. If you really liked Bill Clinton, he had some policies in Haiti that we could really get into some dark places for. You got to go down the list and kind of separate this stuff. As like foreign policy is a very complicated thing that runs completely outside of the time-space continuum of American media and the circadian rhythm of American politics. And we do a really bad job of separating those two things. We want to slam them together and just see them through our point, and it skews our worldview. And when America is the greatest power in the world, that's very bad for the world that we don't have proper perspective on these things because we're usually too ate up with our own affairs, and shame on us for doing it that way.
I'm going to give you another minute here, Mr. ONWUKA, because Mr. Donaldson said something. Are international institutions losing credibility because they appear to be selective in which conflicts they condemn or intervene in?
Oh, absolutely. Let's take the United Nations and the Security Council, and then the broader, advisory councils, very often full of dictators or terrorist-supporting countries. And so, to tell the United States what it can do domestically when you have nations that are certainly fine with child marriage, female gender mutilation, and the kidnapping of young women out of schools for rape and murder, and even worse than that, unwillingness to acknowledge what happened on October 7th, where we just found out some great reports, hundreds of eyewitness testimony corroborating the kind of heinous violence that was perpetrated on women and children by the terrorists in that region. In Gaza at the time, it's hard for us to take these international bodies really seriously.
And we're going to turn our attention to a Wall Street Journal story when we return with our very special guest. Don't go away. I disciplined myself for the interest of getting much into the conversation, not to ask my guests the same question, but I would like to have them both respond to this Wall Street Journal deep dive into Trump's late night Truth Social postings, which reveals something far larger than one man's social media habits. The presidency, Andrew and Ms. ONWUKA, is now unfolding in real time, emotionally, politically, and strategically before the entire world. What Trump understands is that attention is power. Every overnight post redirects the national conversation, energizes, supporters, pressures opponents, and guess what else it does? Bypasses traditional media entirely. But there are consequences, Patricia and Andrew, when presidents govern publicly through emotion and immediacy, markets react, foreign governments watch, allies and adversaries analyze every word. They hang on every word. And you know what is equally important is that Trump's continued effort to drive his movement toward Truth Social itself, a platform tied closely to his personal brand, and that has struggled to monetize and achieve the scale meaning it vision. In fact, the article goes out to say because it gets such little attention, his White House aides purposely make sure that his tweets on other platforms that has far more eyeballs. I'll start with you, Andrew.
Well, there's a lot there, so let's just take one little corner of it to start with. How much of it does he do on purpose, and how much of it is his natural inclinations, his personality?
But it's late at night. It's late at night when he's mad. He has grievance.
Well, yeah, the late night stuff is rants, but he also does have an ability to control it. We are going to get some kind of a True Social posting meant to influence the market 7 a.m. every Monday morning. Like, that's a thing, especially during the Gulf of Hormuz crisis, things like this. Oh, we're going to have a negotiation so we can, affect the market opening. So he does control part of it. But the important part of this is what you just talked about. True Social, the business model, is both the good and the bad of it. He has an ability to talk directly to the entire world, specifically his base, but everybody gets to see it. The monetization part, though, does have a limit on it because they've had trouble monetizing because the first thing that happens is I see it on my Twitter feed, or you see it in the Wall Street Journal, or you see it in the New York Times. The second it goes out, everybody picks it up immediately. It's the same problem Twitter, the company, and now X had, is how do you monetize something when it's just going through you and then going out to everybody? So for good, bad, or indifferent, I think this is actually a good thing because you can see the president in his whole, I think presidents after this are going to model it, probably not to this effect, but everybody sees it and they're going to follow it. But it also gives us, the people, insight directly into the people instead of the traditional gatekeepers like chiefs of staff, like the White House press corps. Good, bad, or indifferent, you're getting it all unvarnished and you can make a judgment for it. In the long run, I think that's a good thing. Now, foreign policy-wise, like you said, when things need to be consistent and coherent, that's not good, but that's part of judging the man himself, and he's giving us an ability to see him directly. All in all, I think that's something that's good for the people long-term for transparency.
But, Mr. Onwuka, it also contributes to why his, if you believe this, his poll numbers, disapproval is almost 70%. It's a double-edged sword, but your take.
I don't think that's why his poll numbers have fallen so significantly. It's 100%.
I said it contributes to it. I didn't say only contributes.
I don't even think it really contributes that much.
His tone? You don't think his tone contributes?
I mean, listen, the people who do not like when the president goes on Truth Social and, makes comments personally about somebody, they don't like him already. His supporters are going to be his supporters because he has closed the border,
Okay.
because he has elevated, security, public safety issues across cities in this country. I will say, though, that what his posts represent is the kind of citizen journalism that we have seen flourish over the past, I would say 10 years in particular, whether you're talking about more right-leaning blogs that have become leading news sources, or whether you're talking about the young kid with a camera who goes to visit, leering centers, which should be learning centers for children, to uncover massive amounts of fraud, systematic fraud in different states. That is what his Truth Social is, him going directly to the people with a message, whether you like it or not. Now, ironically, to my colleague's point about the chief of staff and the gatekeepers, at Independent Women, we just had our big gala in Washington, D.C., where we honored Susie Wiles, the president's chief of staff, first female chief of staff, by the way. And she said, you know what? Every morning, he may come down in the morning and say, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And sometimes they are seeing the truth post alongside the rest of us to understand where his mind is on a particular issue. Sometimes he's using these posts to seed potential ideas just to test the waters and see whether there's going to be backlash or outrage among his supporters. So it's kind of a little bit of message testing. And sometimes it really is a bully pulpit to be able to get lawmakers, allies, and others on board with a particular course of action. So, I really kind of like the fact that he can bypass the traditional media and force them to be catching up to his news stories by driving his agenda forward. Presidents, I absolutely see presidents who really run with this idea of citizen journalism, independence, and going around the traditional media employing this kind of tactic in the future.
You know, there's a tale of two Republican legislatures, Andrew and Ms. ONWUKA, two different definitions of power. In Tennessee, lawmakers erased the state lone majority black congressional district and removed Democrats from committees for protesting the new map. Power answered dissent with punishment. Now, in my home state of South Carolina, Republicans had the votes to target Representative Jim Clyburn district, but several broke ranks, choosing restraint over raw political advantage. Now, that is the difference, some would say, between exercising power and abusing it. Now, gerrymandering is not simply a partisan issue, okay? It is a moral one. Fairness cannot depend on which party benefits. Democracy, we both know, survives only when leaders value institutional trust and human fairness more than securing every possible seat. Now, I believe that Americans are exhausted by politics that treats voters like chess pieces to be rearranged for partisan gain. Competitive elections, Ms. ONWUKA and Mr. Donaldson, should not be feared. They should be respected. The real test of leadership is not what you can do with power, but what you choose not to do when you have it. Now, South Carolina, moment of restraint, however, could prove short-lived if rumors are true that the governor may call the General Assembly back, which he has, into session following a Trump possible endorsement of his lieutenant governor, which means that he's getting pressure from the White House. I'll start with you, Mr. ONWUKA.
Oh, well, this is so interesting. I'm actually wrapping up a piece talking about the movement of the black electorate away from Democratic politics and why Louisiana v. Callis, which is the Supreme Court decision that all but invalidated racially motivated gerrymandered districts, is another nail in the head of Democratic stronghold on black votes. I mean, at the end of the day, this is we're realizing now, and the Supreme Court is underscoring that you can't group people together based on skin color just for political power. And Republicans are responding to that to that Supreme Court decision by reshuffling the seats and redistricting, which the Congressional Black Caucus thinks will lose probably about 19 different member seats after the redistricting happens. But to me, and I agree with you, Armstrong, if you can be elected as a black member of Congress with a black majority district, then why can't you be elected as a black member of Congress in a white majority district or a multi-racial district? It should come down to your policies and what you can deliver for people and start to compete on policies rather than on, blind allegiance, generational alignment with one party versus another that has not delivered on the promises that have been made, but frankly kept a lot of poor undeserved blacks in the same place generation after generation.
Andrew Donaldson, I know you know who Gatan Adani is, the Indian billionaire that was accused of fraud, and they've decided to drop the charges against him. Sometimes people think when that happens now, somebody's getting paid, whether it's a pardon, they just feel it's become so corrupted. Even people believe our credit markets have become so corrupted. Your thoughts?
Yeah, there's a real one of the byproducts of all the political discourse, and we talk about all those things of, our friend just brought up the data she's reviewing. One of the fastest growing groups in America, voting wise, is not a demographic group. It's the double haters who are sick of everybody. That's one of the fastest growing groups. And those are the kind of folks that look at this sort of thing and all they see is corruption and all they see is bad stuff. And the political discourse we're having, where our opponents are always the devil incarnate and your other opponent is always the worst person that lived, that tears down the institutions. So when your opponent wins over you, you don't really have anywhere to back off it. And then when you get human nature and corruption and all the big money involved, we're tearing down our own belief in our own government. And then the fact that when you do have open corruption and you do have really big fish in the sea that seem to get away with everything with impunity, that all starts feeding into it. And we feed ourselves this kind of thing with it on our own little screens. And then when a world event happens like that and a very major player in world finance happens and we see that, you can see where people can go to the conspiracy theories immediately, because conspiracy theories is usually like, that's what you substitute when you don't understand something. And people don't understand how the wealthy get to do whatever they want and the working class folks are always seemingly punished. And if we have this discourse where we're always ripping each other to pieces and we're always tearing down our institutions, there's nowhere else to go with any of that, because if you don't trust justice and you don't trust the government, you're just left with those conspiracies. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of people are. And to be fair, they've got some reasons to be there.
Well, I must say this well said. Mr. ONWUKA, I'm going to wrap with this. What lessons from Iraq, Afghanistan, Ukraine, Gaza, Sudan, Haiti, the South China Seas are policymakers still refusing to confront?
The impact of decisions made in Washington on the daily lives of the people who are in those countries. You look at Haiti, for example. I think that's a lesson that has to be learned.
In Cuba.
All of these countries. Yeah. It's what happens to the people who are on the ground. Are their lives actually made materially better? I think you can make a good case in a lot of those situations, in a number of countries where, yes, U.S. intervention has left people better off. Is that always the case? No. But it does also mean that the United States does end up being better off in some ways. And not always in others. Certainly the loss of servicemen and women for wars that have gone on for too long, or the ending of wars and conflicts where we were hastily removed, for example, in Afghanistan, and we lost 13 service members. It does leave us as Americans wondering, well, was it really worth it? And so you have to have some good, clear reasons for going in and a good, clear exit strategy to come out. And if you're going to make it about humanitarian efforts and saving people and so on and so forth, you really have to understand what costs that's going to come with, and that could be the cost of human American lives.
So, Mr. Donaldson, I listened to you both today, and it seems that this world is in an age of constant crisis. How do democracies maintain public attention and more clarity, I would ask, without just the continuation of exhausting their citizens?
Well, we do representative government here in America, and our government is a representation of us. So if the government is not doing a good job of that, that means we're not doing a good job of being faithful in the little things, and then they manifest in the big things. Something she just said is really important to me. The humanitarian stuff our military does, and as a military veteran, that I got to do some of those things. And I've been around the world. I've seen a lot of things. There is nothing on God's earth like Haiti. I can't even explain it to you. You just got to see it to understand some of the horrific stuff going on there. When we do those humanitarian things, that is the best parts of us. And the ability to do that worldwide on call and help anybody in the world, that's something we don't talk about enough, and we don't put that front and center enough. Probably because it doesn't trend super good, and probably because it's not, the trending item of the day on the headlines. We'd rather blow stuff up and look cool doing it. But that's part of the good part of our representative government, is our representative government, us as a people, our representatives in the military, do all that humanitarian stuff. We can use all this hard power that we've accumulated to do really good things in the world. And we can do it at home when we have disaster reliefs and things like that. Part of what you're asking, we just need to do more of that than we're doing, and we need to emphasize it, and we need to talk about it, and we need to talk about why that brings us together a lot more than the things that are just shades of political colors on the ballots and in the ideological struggles we have. Those things can bring us together. If we talk about those more, we'll all be a lot better off.
Two of my favorite and most intellectual commentators, Mr. ONWUKA, Mr. Donaldson. It's always a pleasure to communicate and debate with fair-minded, moral clarity, people of character and integrity. You really give a good name to journalism, whether it's print or broadcast, and that's what it's going to take to return trust to the American people. And I appreciate that. And I always thank you for joining us, and I can never say that enough. We'll be back to look at the economy when we return. Let's examine the economy Americans are actually living in, not simply the one reflected in government reports and Wall Street headlines. families across the country continue asking difficult questions. Why does everything still feel expensive? Why does home ownership feel increasingly out of reach? Why are younger Americans working harder yet feeling further behind? And why do so many communities from Baltimore to small town America feel economically uncertain despite constant talk of recovery, Mr. President? And at the same time, America faces rising national debt, concerns about inflation, pressure on local businesses, workforce shortages, housing instability, and growing fears about what artificial intelligence and globalization may mean for future jobs and economic security. So where is the country truly headed economically? Jordan Goodman and Steve LaFFey. Let me start with you, Jordan. Where are we headed? Address these issues. It's interesting.
And the war is making things even more uncertain than it had been before because it's made fuel prices go up so much and inflation. We had a number yesterday, 3.8% on the consumer price index. That's up sharply when it had been in the twos for a long time. And Americans are feeling it, not only directly at the pump, but indirectly. The cost of transporting goods to the store is going up, so that's making prices of food and all kinds of other things going up. So that's clearly this affordability crisis that people are worried about. And you mentioned a lot of other things too. They're clearly worried about artificial intelligence. I mean, we're building a huge number of these data centers around the country. Latest numbers I saw, Armstrong, $715 billion is being spent this year alone on building these data centers, up from $400 billion last year. So that's great construction jobs, but in the long run, these don't employ a lot of people, but I think they're going to displace a lot of people, particularly the younger graduates who are getting out of school right now. In many cases, those entry-level positions just don't exist anymore because AI is doing it for them. Those are just two of the things you mentioned.
So, Mr. LaFFey, why do things feel so more expensive? Why does home ownership feel so increasingly out of reach for so many people? And why are young Americans working harder and still feeling they're so further behind?
It doesn't feel that way. It is that way. Home prices are up 50% since 2020. Inflation totally is up 25%, and wages for the average American, even people who are making 100 grand in 2019 or 2020, are not. The Fed has totally failed to keep inflation even at their target for 5 straight years. In 2019, it was 1.9%, and since then it's been 4, 8, 3. It came down a little bit, but a lot of this is reminding me of what happened in the 1960s and 1970s. Remember, we had guns and butter, and then nowadays we had COVID. We had all this stuff coming, then we had a release. You know, we had price controls in the 70s. We had inflation come down, and now, I mean, the producer price index last week was up 6% on an annual basis. That feeds into the consumer price index, and the reason people feel so poor is because they simply are. Car loans are in arrears. People are using their credit card. In fact, credit card debt hit an all-time record this week at $1.25 trillion. Now, the administration and Dennis Hassett is like, this is great. People are borrowing money and the economy is booming along. No, people are taking on more debt. We're taking on more debt. The nation's taking on more debt just as a new Fed governor comes in.
You know, so, Mr. Goodman, where is this country truly headed economically? Are we rebuilding long-term stability or simply managing permanent financial pressure?
Well, I think there's a big divide between those who are doing well and those who are not doing well. The majority of people are not doing that well, as Steve was just saying. But the people at the top, the stock market has been hitting record highs. All the people investing in artificial intelligence are doing really well. We're about to have 2 major initial public offerings, SpaceX and OpenAI, and those are going to do spectacularly well. They're going to raise $800 billion each. So those people are doing great right now, Armstrong. But as Steve and I have been saying, I think the vast majority of people, and you're seeing it in the consumer confidence numbers, which are literally at the lowest they've ever been since the Michigan started, compiling those numbers decades ago.
You know, I was just sitting here thinking, Steve, about this domestic economy, the financial future, and what these challenges mean for everyday citizens trying to build stable lives and lasting opportunity. How is this any different or worse from the Great Depression? How is this any different before and after World War II? How is this any different during the 60s and the 70s when it seems like we face all crises? Why is this any different than what we've always faced throughout the founding of America? The poor has always been among us, and they've been overwhelming. So why is this any different?
Well, one difference is the poor are actually far wealthier than 1890, right?
Yes, absolutely.
No comparison. I
yes.
mean, the Great Depression, where we did not have Social Security at the beginning, and it became, as Roosevelt said, a temporary. I mean, people were getting adjusted for inflation today like $60 a month, right? I mean, now the average check going out to someone who's 67 is $2,000 a month. So
right.
It's a whole system. We didn't have the transfer payments. Now, there's a lot of similarities to the 60s and 70s, and we worked our way out of it. But how did we work our way out of these problems of overspending? The war on poverty, the great society payments, Vietnam War, et cetera, et cetera. How did we get out of it? There was a man named Paul Volcker who got us out of it. Not Ronald Reagan, not Jimmy Carter, who actually appointed him. He jacked up rates, Fed short-term rates to 20%. He cured it. It took 2 real recessions. We came out of it, and we did fine. And we will come out of it and do fine. The question is, will the new Fed chairman, Mr. Warsh, be a Paul Volcker, or the 1970s Arthur Burns, who succumbed to political pressure, and we had much more and higher inflation, which really hurt the middle class. My family, I remember it very well, in the 1970s. It's his choice. Warsh says inflation is a job of the Fed, is a choice, and it's a job of the Federal Reserve. He said it many times. Let's see what he does.
So, Jordan, Steve hit it. I mean, listen, every generation has this conversation. Every generation. We've always had the poor. We always have these struggles. We have these markets. We have depressions. And in fact, some would say, if you look at our history, in terms of what people are able to monetize and create wealth around today, some would say it's as good as it's ever been.
For certain people it is. As I mentioned, the whole AI revolution is going to create a lot of billionaires. A lot of the people who've been working at OpenAI are becoming multimillionaires because their stock's about to go public. So yes, for some people it's doing extremely well. And we're able to develop new technologies and biotech and all kinds of areas that really help people a lot. And I think AI will help there too. But a lot of people are not participating in that at all.
Well, why are they not participating? Why? Because they don't have the skills? Because they're not aggressive enough? They're not hungry enough? They're not motivated enough? I mean, come on.
They just don't have access.
What about the human condition itself?
They don't have access to these things in many cases. I mean,
what does that mean? So what does it mean they don't have access? What does it mean they don't have access?
Well, I mean, the schools are bad. They don't have artificial intelligence there. You know, you go to the higher end universities and high schools.
The majority of millionaires in this country never graduated from, never went to college. They only graduated from high school. So what are you talking about?
Well, and what happened with them is they created some kind of a business that provides some kind of a service that was needed by the public, and it worked.
And that's happening today with young people. Young people, look at what they're doing with the pilot market. Kasi, look at what they're doing. Look at what they've created, these young people. No matter, not because of, but in spite of, people find a way to find a market for themselves, and they master it.
A lot of people do, but a lot of people don't. Okay, there's a lot of people left.
And the wealth class is taking care of them. They provide for them. They provide opportunities. But what they want to do, they want to tax the rich. They want to tax the wealth class. They want to make us out to be the boogeyman.
Well, they do. I mean, this is the left of center states like California who want to put a tax on billionaires and so forth. They want to tax wealth. This is coming, by the way. I mean, this great turning in the next year is actually coming to a crescendo. What it means, we don't know how it turns out. What we're talking about, though, is that people will adapt over time. For example, even with higher oil prices today, if the war goes on, and believe me, I'm all favor of regime change in Iran. I've been saying it since I was 22, but President Trump wasn't really prepared to keep it going this long. He probably has to keep it going longer. But
all I want to say, go ahead.
October, change their behavior. If they're still driving, they'll have to get another car with more gas, mileage per gallon. They'll do things that change. People will adapt, but there's a lot of people who are not ready for this, and
these prices, this economy is not coming back. This is a new norm for us. You got to adjust to it. Listen, I guarantee you, among the three of us and so many others, we work harder, smarter, longer than we've ever worked before. But we have something to show for it because we still have to work. You can't look to the government. The government cannot do today what it did 20 or 30 years ago. It just can't. It is
One of the reasons that I'm strong is the amount of debt. We've got almost $4 trillion in debt. So that's all of the accumulated debt from having done all these wonderful things for all these years. The interest on the debt alone is over $1 trillion, which is more than anything else. So that's a burden that these previous generations did not have.
You know what I'm going to do, because you're my brother, Steve, Jordan. You know, I got my man Tom Garner coming up. You know, I'm on my way to the Preakness. You know, you got to get away from this chaos, this craziness. Sometimes you got to go gamble a little bit, not just on the horses. You got to gamble on yourself. You got to take risk. You got to be a risk taker. You cannot be risk averse. So when we come back, we're going to get ready for the Preakness that's running today and right in our backyard, right at Laurel Merlin. First time in ages because the Preakness is being reconstructed. But hey, it's the weekend of the Second Crown, and we got to have some fun. Guys, thank you. I got to come back and talk about those ponies, baby. Don't go away. You know I was at the Kentucky Derby this year. I'm going to do the entire Triple Crown this year. But we turn our attention today to one of Maryland's most historic sporting traditions, the Preakness Stakes, and the world that exists far beyond the few minutes Americans see on one race. Because for generations, the Preakness has represented far more than a horse race. It reflects Maryland heritage, agriculture, discipline, risk, instinct, competition, and the extraordinary relationship between horse and rider. Behind every race exists years of preparation, breeding, training, sacrifice. And joining me today is my man, Tom Garner. I want to welcome my man, there's Tom. And he has a jockey here today, Sheldon Russell. He looks like a jockey. Let's talk about this Preakness, guys. What can we expect today at this, the second running of the Triple Crown? Tom, we'll start with you, the redhead.
Yeah, honoured to be on, to be honest with you, as an adopted Marylander. We've actually got two English guys that are both adopted Marylanders. And yeah, it's definitely a race that Maryland's very proud to have, and I hope they have it for a long time to come. And you're asking someone that's an amateur at picking horses for the flat racing as a steeplechase guy, but I'd love to see my man there on the left, Sheldon Russell, win for his wife Brittany. This horse has got obviously course distance form, and it'd be great to see them win on Saturday.
So Sheldon, you're racing on today.
I'm racing today. I've got a few tomorrow, and then obviously Saturday. I think I'll ride 4 races on Saturday.
4 races? Oh my goodness! What is it like being a jockey out on? Running with those horses, and you're running for the gusto, man. Talk about that, and what prepares you for this?
There's a lot of preparation. You know, I've been a jockey for many years now, and to have a mount in the big race come Saturday, it's a huge milestone. I get to ride one of my wife's horses. So look, if he were to win, it'd be a very special day for both of us.
Is he a long shot? What's your horse's name? I don't mind. You can tell us.
He's the #1 horse. His name is Taj Mahal. They've got him at 5-1. I think he's second or third choice.
Oh, right. In the Preakness race itself?
In the big race
itself.
Oh
my goodness, 5-1. That's amazing. Well, listen, I'm taking notes. Listen, what is so different from this race than the Belmont or the Kentucky Derby? And it doesn't matter that the horse that won the Kentucky Derby is not running today.
Yeah, it's always nice to see the Derby winner, go on and compete in the Preakness, but look, some opt not to do it. It's only a short space in between races, so look, horse first. Look, it's good for us the Derby winner's not in it because look, he's obviously a good horse, but it's a huge deal. It's the biggest day in Maryland racing. It's the biggest race, and like I said, just to have a runner in the race, it's something to be very proud of.
It is so special for us here at WGLA to have you on as a jockey running in the race today. And you're in 4 different races today, but your horse is 5-1 in the Preakness. Tom, and we appreciate you for making this possible. From a jockey's perspective, what emotions and pressures come with racing at an event that is so historic as the Preakness, Tom? And how much preparation truly goes into getting the jockey and the horse physically and mentally prepared for a race of this magnitude?
As you can tell, I'm a few pounds ago as being a jockey, unlike Sheldon. I didn't miss a meal last night. I'm sure Sheldon's missed a few this week. To be fair on Sheldon, I would give him a lot of big him up a lot here. I often get a Snapchat of Sheldon running in probably 4 or 5 layers of clothing in 90 degrees heat, having to lose a few pounds, and so it's a hard life. I used to ride as a flat jockey, and it was a hard, miserable life, trying to cut weight all the time. And it's a lot. It's not just turning up at the races and getting on the horse and doing it. Like Brittany, Sheldon's wife, she's there at 5 a.m. every day with a team of horses, and she has a great team of staff behind her. So it's not just the trainer, the jockeys. It's everything from a blacksmith to a vet to the grooms, the hot walkers, the work riders. There's so much more behind the race than the actual race itself. There's a whole team, whole network of people involved behind every horse. One horse employs so many people, and not many people realize that. It's a whole army behind the one horse. So it's a credit for all the staff in racing to getting these horses to the actual post.
So Sheldon, what is different about Laurel versus the old Preakness where the race was, they had to switch to the Laurel? And you know, many fans, Sheldon, only see the excitement on race day. What is it they do not fully understand about the work happening behind the scenes year-round, as Tom just touched on?
Yeah, I mean, like Tom said, it's a lot that goes into it. What you see probably on the TV is all the good. I mean, it's very important for these trainers to keep these horses healthy and keep them in the best shape of their lives. And you know, just the build-up for getting the horse ready for the race, a lot goes into it. You know, you got to get the horse fit. You got to, you know, keep the condition on the horse, and yeah, just keeping that horse healthy. Sometimes it's not as easy as it looks, but look, our horse going into Saturday, he's come out of his last race good. He's trained phenomenal. The whole team is excited, and like Brittany's got a great team behind her. She's got a lot of assistant trainers, a lot of people that work for her stable that people probably don't even know of. So it's not just her. She's got a great team behind her.
You just mentioned something. You know, horse racing carries enormous financial and emotional risk. What keeps people committed to the sport despite the uncertainty? And then getting to the betting on this. I mean, if your horse is 5-1, that means that horse is one of the favorites. Oh, it's just a fact. I know.
Yeah, he's up there.
He's up there. You don't have to tell me.
He's up there. I just think the love of the game, you've really got to love horse racing. You really got to love it. And to have a horse running in the Preakness would be something as an owner. You know, there's only 14 runners, so you'd be having one of the best 14 3-year-old boys in America. I mean, it would be it's a big feat.
Tom, has the culture of a horse racing changed significantly over the past decade? And like Sheldon, you're also involved with your wife, you know, Devin, who's HHS international correspondent. I just want you to know that Tom is Devin's better half, Devin Smith. What is it like it has enhanced the situation when both spouses are involved in the same sport and the same commitment, and understand the kind of regimen it takes to make this a success on racing day?
I was lucky enough to actually work for Brittany and Sheldon a while ago, and I see the dedication and love that they have for the sport. And just touching back, I would really love to see them win on Saturday. And draw 1 at Laurel, quick into the turn, it's definitely going to suit them. So I would really love to see them win. I really would.
Well, look, what does it take to win Sheldon Russell?
I was going to ask you the same question. Look, it's a track that I ride at most weeks. Obviously, with the renovations happening at Pimlico, the race this year is at Laurel Park. The horse I've ridden, he's ran all 3 races there. He's won 3 races, so the horse is familiar with it.
Okay.
You know, Laurel's my home track, so I feel like we have a little home field advantage. The horse gets to walk out of his stall. He doesn't have to sort of ship and go to a new racetrack for the first time in his career. So we have like a home field advantage. Hopefully that plays to our strengths come on Saturday. And yeah, me and Brittany have a good working relationship. People ask me this question a lot. the answer's the same all the time. You know, she's my boss at work and she's my wife when she gets home. So hopefully the horse run's good for us on Saturday, and yeah, we can have a celebration at nighttime.
You know, Juanita is already doing her homework, and she just sent this to me. She said, Taj Mahal is a top 3-year-old contender for the 2026 Preakness Stakes, 151st running, entering as an undefeated 3 for 3 in Maryland, base horse trained by Brittany Russell. Listen at 5 to 1. Listen, I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm betting on this horse. I have no shame about it. Just for good measure, because you're here today. We appreciate it. I'm gonna bet on the horse. Any final thoughts, Sheldon?
No, look, I had said Laurel gets to host this big event, so I'm happy to see Laurel get the chance to hold the Preakness Stakes. I think it's going to be a wonderful day, and yeah, we're all excited, and hopefully Taj Mahal's there for me. I can give him a good trip, and yeah.
Well, listen, you're not the only one. So I'm unbuckling right now. I got to get out of here. I got to get loose. I got to get out of here. Okay, Tom, Sheldon, I'll see you guys at the track today. We're betting. We're on it. Thank you, everybody. Thank all our guests. Enjoy the weekend. It's the Preakness, baby. Get to it.
See ya. Appreciate it.